Hello friends, and welcome to lecture 14 in our series of lectures on Java programming language. In today's lecture we will be discussing a very important concept in Java or in any other programming language, and that is the concept of functions. Functions from the base of any program. Every program which you see contains one or more functions, and the entire program logic is divided into it. So in today's lecture, I will be giving you an in-depth understanding of what do you mean by function, what are the different types of functions, and a sample program which demonstrates all these different types of functions. So first of all, let us understand what do you mean by a function. So a function is nothing but it is a group of statements which are performing a specific task. Let's say you have assigned some work to someone. The person has to perform a set of tasks in the order of A, B, C. So what you are doing is you have created a function. You are allocating some task, some function to someone, and the method to perform that function has also been described. As per the method given by you, the person just has to apply or implement those statements in order to get the desired result. So not only are you assigning the task, you are also providing the statements or you are also providing the guidelines to complete the task. And when all of those guidelines or all of those steps are implemented, the entire task would be completed. This is exactly what we as a programmer do when writing a program. Within a function, we define the set of statements which will make our task complete. For example, if it is a program to add numbers, so within the function, we would be writing down the set of statements which will perform addition of two numbers. Now, why do we need functions? Why can't we write the entire code together in one function itself? Why do you need separate functions? The answer is that functions help you divide the logic for better understanding, better readability, and better debugging. As an example, let's say if you have designed a calculator program in which all the operations are performed in one function. Now, maybe you get the answer for addition, subtraction, and multiplication correctly, but the answer of division is not correct. In that case, it will be very difficult for you to debug exactly at which point the error has occurred. And sometimes it may also happen that by changing one statement, the other outputs also might be affected. But when you have written separate functions for separate operations, then any change that you make in that particular function will not affect the others, and it is easier to debug. Let's come to the different types of functions which you can write. So you have functions which do not accept any kind of parameters, nor do they return a value. Functions which accept parameters but do not return value. Functions that do not accept parameter but still return a value. And function which accept parameters as well as return a value. So if I have to explain all four of these concepts in very layman's example, I'll say that suppose if you as a professor, I'll use my example. In the first case, I am asking my students to prepare notes on the subject where I am teaching. For preparation of the notes, I am not giving them any material from my side, nor do I expect them to return me the notes or to submit me the notes after they have completed. So I have not provided them with any material from my side, nor am I expecting them to return me or to submit me the notes which they have prepared. So in this case, I have created a function or I have created a task where none of the parameters are being accepted, nor is the function returning any value. The second scenario is that the function accepts parameters but doesn't return a value. Taking the same example, suppose if to help my students, I give them my set of notes and I ask them to Xerox that copy and to use it as their own material. But after Xeroxing, if I ask them, do not return the original back to me, you can keep it for yourself. So here I have given them a task of preparing the notes. I am also giving them some parameter from my side. I am giving them a copy of my own notes. And after the task is completed, I am not even asking for any return value. So that is accepts parameters but doesn't return a value. The third scenario doesn't accept parameters but returns a value. Let's say I ask my students to prepare notes for my subject and I tell them that after your notes are complete, you have to submit a copy of the notes to me. I am not helping them out in providing any copy from my own side. In fact, after the work is done, I expect them to submit a copy from their end to me. So here in this task, I have not given any parameters, but I expect a return value. Last scenario, function which accepts parameters and returns a value. So suppose if I ask my students to prepare a set of notes for which I am giving them my original copy of notes. I ask them to Xerox it, prepare notes from them, and after their Xeroxing is done, they have to hand over the original back to me. So this is which accepts parameters and returns a value. So let us see first of all the syntax for writing all the four functions. The first is a function which doesn't accept parameter nor returns a value. Whenever a function is not returning any value, we write down the return type as void. Then we write down the function name and put empty brackets because no parameters are being passed here. The function statements are enclosed within curly brackets, and here we write down our function statements. Coming to the second case where the function is accepting parameters but not returning a value. Since it is not returning any value, the return type will be void, followed by the function name. Within round brackets, we pass the parameters to the function, and in curly brackets, these are your function statements to be executed. The third case is function which doesn't accept parameters but still returns a value. In that case, because the function is returning any value, we have to mention the return type. Now generally, return type is nothing but the data type of the value that it is returning. For example, if the function is returning an integer value, the return type would be int. If the function is returning a string value, the data type or the return type would be string. So depending on what value the function is returning, accordingly you have to write down the return type. Since it is not accepting any parameters, the function brackets remain empty. Within the function, you will write down the function statements, and compulsorily there will be a return statement where you have to return a value. Whenever you write a function which is not having void as the return type, such kind of a function has to return a value. If it doesn't, it will show an error. Coming to the last category, function which accepts parameters and returns a value. So here you will mention the return type since it will not be void, followed by the function name. Within brackets, you will pass the parameters to the function. In curly brackets, the function statements would be written, followed by the return statement where a value would be returned. So these are the 4 categories of functions along with their syntax. Now let us have a look at this example in which I have created a class wherein all the 4 different types of functions are illustrated, and I am calling all those 4 functions through void main. So I have a class by the name of operations in which I have 4 functions by the name of add1, add2, add3 and add4. In each of these functions I am preparing the addition operation, but the functions differ according to the different function categories. So my first function add1 is a function which is not accepting any parameters, nor is it returning a value. So the syntax is void followed by the function name add1 and empty brackets. Within the function I am creating variables num1, num2, giving them my own values. Answer will be equal to num1 plus num2, and I am displaying the sum to the user. In the second function add2, again it is not returning any value, so the return type is void, but I am accepting 2 parameters which are both of the type integer. So as you can see, int num1 comma int num2. Now the variables num1 and num2 which are created in this function are different from the variables created in add1. Even though the name is same, but these functions are only existent till that function executes. The moment the function add1 or add2 completes execution, those variables become non-existent. So such type of variables are called as local variables, which are created within a function or within a block, and their lifetime is only till that particular function executes. Once the function completes execution, they become non-existent. Here again, answer is equal to num1 plus num2. So here the value of num1 and num2 is directly passed to the function. I am not taking my own values, and the numbers are added to display the answer. In the third function, the function is not accepting any parameters but returning a value. So once again, within the function you create num1 and num2 with the values 3 and 4. Answer will be equal to num1 plus num2. Rather than printing the value of answer here itself, I am returning the value of answer. Now one thing you have to be very careful about is when you are returning a value in void main, when I am calling that function, the value returned has to be stored somewhere. So if you see over here in void main, over here when I'm calling add3, the value returned is being stored in this variable called as answer, and I'm printing the value of answer in system.out.println. The fourth function has a return type and accepts parameters. So it is accepting 2 integer values which are being added into answer, and when the function returns answer, since the data type of answer variable is integer, the return type of the function is also integer. Now in void main, first of all, whenever you need to call functions of the class, you will have to first create an object. This is what we saw in the previous lecture. So I first create an object of the class by using the syntax class name object name is equal to new class name. Then using the object, the first function I call is add1, no parameters, not returning any value. Then add2, where I have to pass 2 parameters, let's say numbers 4 and 5. So 4 gets stored in num1 and 5 gets stored in num2. Then I call add3, wherein no parameters are passed, but it is returning a value which will be stored in this integer variable whose answer I am printing. And then I call add4, which again is accepting 2 parameters. So 4 and 5 are the values that I am passing. 4 gets stored in num1, 5 gets stored in num2, and it is returning a value which has to be stored in an integer variable whose value is being printed. Again, answer over here is different from the answer variable created in add3 and add 4. Hope this was useful for you. Thank you.